Hello, I'm Leon Conrad, founder and lead trainer at the Academy of Oratory, tutor at the Traditional Tutor, writer, orator in residence at the Next Society Institute, and a fan of George Spencer Brown's work. I was his last student and have applied George Spencer Brown's work to showing how it can be used to make classical logic easier, and most recently to story structure. I'm the kind of guy who likes to find satisfactory answers to questions we may not yet have satisfactory answers to. The question I want to pose to you today is this: what if there's more to sentences than we're taught at schools? What are we taught at schools? In the UK, since 2013, a sentence has been defined as follows: a group of words which are grammatically connected to each other but not to any words outside the sentence. So here the focus is on words. You cannot have a sentence unless you have words. When you do, the form of a sentence's main clause, and it's interesting they use the word form here, shows whether it is being used as a statement, a question, a command, or an exclamation. Those are the four types of sentences acknowledged in the UK educational system. What about in the US? Well, since 2010, in the English Language Arts Standards from grade 1, students are expected to produce and expand particular sentence types, simple and compound sentences in the same four sentence types: declarative, statements; interrogative, questions; imperative, orders; and exclamatory sentences, the exclamations. Here, sentences are not defined, but in the documentation, the reader is referred to common dictionary definitions. In Australia, since 2018, students are required to recognise the different types of punctuation. So here, we're limiting the focus to written sentences. Different types of punctuation, including full stops, question marks, and exclamation marks, signal sentences that make statements, ask questions, express emotion, those are the exclamatory sentences, or that give commands. So the same four types of sentences are referenced here. What if there's more to sentences than we're taught at school? Where does laws of form come in? Well, there's a statement near the beginning of Laws of Form that claims the book covers a way we can trace the basic forms underlying linguistic science, among other things. It starts with two basic ideas: the idea of distinction and the idea of indication. Well and good. The idea of distinction maps to not only sound, the basic building blocks, the stoicheia, the elements of language, but also to the basic kinds of parts of speech. Those are the elements we use to build sentences, and we'll see how it relates directly to a particular sentence type in a minute. The mark of distinction can be likened to words that fit into the noun family, and the mark of indication, which signifies an action that takes place through time, although both have elements of both the static and the dynamic to them, fits more with the words that fit into the verb family. This comes from a Steiner school approach to teaching language. And this demarcation is very much part of the liberal arts tradition. It is very much part of the way Steiner approached language. You have the noun family and the verb family. The noun family on the left, the verb family on the right, with a few exceptions. I would put prepositions in the noun family, conjunctions in the verb family, prepositions and noun joining, conjunctions of verb joining. I would put pronouns in the noun family. They stand for nouns or noun phrases, but I would also note the absence of the interjection. Wow, yay. These interjections, I think, straddle both the noun family and the verb family. You need somebody to be present for the interjection to happen. You also can't have an interjection without that interjection taking place as an action that unfolds over time. So you have both the static and the dynamic element in the same word. What if there's more to sentences than we're taught in school? In chapter 1, George Spencer Brown notes that simple expressions boil down to 3 forms of arrangement and 1 absence of form. Could there be a connection with a sentence? Perhaps. If you define a sentence as a complete thought. A complete thought like Jack and Jill went up the hill. Jack and Jill, or only two, is a meaningful sequence of words, but it doesn't form a complete thought. It's missing something. Went up the hill, or can play this game, also are 2 meaningful groups of words, but they don't make sense on their own. A complete thought needs a substantive, a substance word or phrase, and a verb, a predicate. A noun or pronoun provides the static element, the substantive element, and a verb, the dynamic. They both come together in the interjection or the exclamation. They're stated or implied in any sentence. A sentence is basically a logos, a creative act. Let's take the 4 types of sentences that are common among the 3 syllabi we looked at. What really is the difference between them? There's no difference in word or form between the first and third, for instance. There is a difference in the exclamation mark and the full stop or period. The point is not in the words or the punctuation marks, but the difference in the quality of thought. Going back to this level is nothing new. It was there in Aristotle. In his work, Perihermeneios, also known as De Interpretatione, he says, spoken words are the symbols of mental experience. Written words are the symbols of spoken words. They also go back to mental experience. Just as men have not the same writing, so all men have not the same speech sounds. You say either, I say either, you say tomato, I say tomato. It's that kind of thing. The mental experiences which these directly symbolize are the same for all. So let's assume that sentence types reflect different qualities of thought and see where that takes us. Do they link to expressions? I think they do. Only two can play this game is a declarative sentence. It's a statement, and it bears a one-to-one correspondence with the intended meaning. What better than a mark to symbolize that? Mark, mark equals mark. The question has an oscillatory quality between the marked state and the unmarked state. When you ask a question, you're not sure which of the possible answers is the satisfactory one. When you determine that it is, you change from an oscillatory state to a fixed one, a mark. With the exclamation, you have a eureka moment. You get a realization, and as a result of that, your expression of it, or your making sense of it, opens out, it unfolds. As a result, the mark opens out into two marks. Conversely, The order appears when a thinker or a speaker bears the present situation in mind, a future possibility, and brings them together as two concrete elements. And when the order is fulfilled, then the desired outcome is realized. Mark, mark equals mark. There's a condensation rather than an expansion. We've covered the mark beside mark, expanding and condensing. We've also covered the single mark. We've added the mark of oscillation, which comes in chapter 11, Laws of Form. But what about the mark over mark and the absence of a mark? Can laws of form teach us something about sentences? Yes, it can. There is a type of sentence that fits the mark over mark perfectly. It used to be taught, in fact, it still appears in books like Sister Miriam Joseph's The Trivium, and it's there in the Steiner system. It's the optative sentence, the wish or prayer. It's ideally symbolized by the mark over mark in Spencer Brown's system. It's a basic, simple expression that indicates something that is wished for. It's not there, but you know what it is. You just also know that it isn't there. It's not oscillatory, though. There's no doubt about it. It's just a mark over mark. The absence of form, however, is different. If we define a sentence as a particular quality of thought, then we have to include the quality of thought that is present in situations like Dante viewing the divine presence at the end of Paradiso. When you or I are gobsmacked, awe-struck, and find ourselves speechless, we still have something very concrete in terms of our quality of thought that is filling our minds. What better to symbolize this than the absence of form? What about the interrobang? This is a sentence type that was defined in the second half of the 20th century. It combines the qualities of the question and the exclamation, but you can find it across all sentence types. It has a dynamic, emotional quality and a linear, rational quality. Well, there is a symbol in Laws of Form by Spencer Brown that could equate to this. It's stated, it's not expanded on, but it's there in the work. And it's a symbol I use quite extensively when I analyze story structure in my book Story and Structure. So what if there's more to sentences than we're taught in school? I think Laws of Form shows us that there is, and looking at sentences through the lens of Laws of Form actually tells us more about Laws of Form and how it works. Take the forward and backward barb, for instance. It tells us more about the importance of that. Laws of Form points to the need to re-examine the way we teach language. Sentences are not just about punctuation marks or words or form. They're about the quality of thought that gives rise to the form of the sentence. The optative, as we've seen, is an embodied aspect to our thinking. We wish, we pray. Why exclude wishes and prayers? Life's better with them. The awestruck silence is also an important part of the way we think. It's a distinct sentence type if we define sentences as different qualities of thought. Including it as primary, which it is in Laws of Form, would cultivate respect for mystery, and that is not a bad thing. Laws of form claims to outline the basic forms underlying linguistic science. Well, it works remarkably well, not just in mathematics, but at the level of word, sentence, story. We can learn more about laws of form by viewing it through the lens of language. 4 of the 18 story structures I expound on in Story and Structure map to different types of simple declarative sentences. You have the exclamation, you have the simple sentence with the intransitive verb, a transitive verb, and a bitransitive verb. Each of those sentences will be found to follow a different story structure. But that, as they say, is a different story for a different time. For now, if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.